Welcome to Explain 12. The sim was actually released yesterday, so these are my first impressions of the sim. First, you'll have to excuse the nature of my rudder control. I haven't set, at this point I hadn't set curves for your pitch and roll. I would highly recommend doing that. It's a little bit kind of awkward setting those up with Explain 12, with Explain in general, because I think Laminar Research have more of a technical way of doing things rather than an intuitive way of doing things, so it's not the easiest thing to do, and you probably have to look at some videos to give you an idea of what to do. In the end, you may have to do what I did, which is just to experiment, because I don't think anyone really explains it all that well, which perhaps speaks for itself. This is, well, is it competition or MSFS? I think they're two different things in a way. Visually, it is clearly not as good a looking sim as MSFS. The ground looks pretty awful. Clouds have issues. I have them set to maximum detail. Sometimes they have kind of shimmering, kind of pixely kind of issues. Sometimes they look pretty good. The rain effect, to me, that when you have rain on the windscreen, it almost looks like it's a bitmap that's being dragged over the windscreen, if that makes any sense. It just doesn't look right at all. It looks really low resolution, and the overall effect, I get what they're trying to achieve, but it just doesn't look all that great. The aircraft themselves, yeah, there's some nice stuff. The gyro looks kind of, the gyro wobble, for want of a better word, that's a really cool thing to see when you actually see it. They're okay. I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking about the cockpits. I mean, these are default aircraft. Of course, we're in the Cessna 172. It flies okay. I'm kind of struggling a little bit setting the default view up. I think this is too low. You see me just raising the position so I can see a little bit of the top of the I can't remember the name of the thing now. The canopy hood, for want of a better word. I know I'm going to remember that word after I finished this video, but you really need to kind of see that to be able to define your pitch, especially when you're on approach. I know that word is going to come to me any second. Anyway, so, but then you kind of ended up a little bit seated a little bit high for when you're looking left. I've got the view left, a glance left set up, and it kind of doesn't work. You see, I don't have a good view. Maybe it's just the Cessna 172, I haven't flown it for such a long time, but my left view just doesn't work when I'm turning on the final. I can't see the runway when I look left, so maybe a case where track IR or VR is pretty much going to be mandatory for aircraft like this. As you can see, the ground looks pretty awful. I think we've been spoiled in a way by MSFS. It's probably going to be one of those VFR for MSFS for VFR and Explain 12 for IFR. Honestly, if I had the choice right now for the stuff that I'm doing at the moment, I would definitely go back to MSFS. There are one or two little bugs. If you, for example, if you're looking at one of the instrument views and then you glance left, you're kind of stuck in that view. You have to return to the 3D default, which is, you can set a button up to do that, so you can reset the default position. But I would say it's definitely a bug. If you're looking between the instrument views, if you look at the instrument panel, for example, then look at the instrument sub panel below it, you can't get out of that. You can't just, for example, if you select the instrument panel, then select it again, you'll go back to the normal view. But if you select the sub panel and then select sub panel again, it will go back to the last view, which is the instrument panel. So you have to go to the default view. Little, you know, bugs, but that have a workaround. But again, the biggest thing for me, and again, it's probably just the 172, I can't use a glance left when I'm in this view. When I'm just in that slightly higher view, I'm not even sure if I dropped it, I'd still be able to see the runway. So is it something inspiring? Am I looking at this thinking this is a huge step up from X-Plane 11? I've got the NVIDIA screen up so you can see the frame rate. I've got things pretty much set to high rather than ultra, if I can use that terminology. So, and I'm still getting good frame rates. You see, turning on the final here is a little bit of a guess because I can't look left reliably, so I've not got this quite right. On the ground when I'm taxiing, it feels a bit bumpy. It feels like the ground I'm taxiing over is really rough. It takes an awful lot of power to get it moving, but then that's something with X-Plane 11. If you've flown in 172, you'll know which one has it right, MSFS or X-Plane 11/12. I honestly don't see any huge issues with this. There are bugs that are going to be ironed out over a period of time, but ultimately it comes down to, are you okay with these visuals? The clouds, the issues with the clouds will be sorted out over time, I'm sure. It kind of in a way reminds me of X-Enviro, although it's much better than X-Enviro, because X-Enviro used to really hurt frames. Even with the worst weather conditions, frames still hold up pretty well. I can't complain about that. But again, you know, if you're flying IFR, this will probably be the aircraft for you. But if you're looking at VFR, I would definitely say stick with MSFS. Nothing much more I can say about that for the time, but you have to get a bit deeper into it. But hopefully you've had a look at this and it's given you an idea as to, you know, how much of an advance it is from X-Plane 11. ATC, I had high hopes for it, and you know what, in a way MSFS does it better. And the reason I'm saying that, I've done a lot of circuit work recently, and MSFS, for all the criticism that it gets, actually handles that pretty well. For example, you can remain in pattern. You can't do that with this ATC. It doesn't understand that. It only understands departures. It doesn't understand remaining pattern. So you can't do proper circuits with ATC because the option just isn't there. They made such a big deal out of better ATC, and yet something as basic as that, they didn't do it. I don't understand that. That's a really huge, in my opinion, that's a really huge oversight, and that's something that they need to look at. Also, with ATC, you have to, as far as I'm aware, you have to click the option. MSFS does it so much better when it's all bound to keys, so you can press 1 for the first option, 2 for the second option. When you're flying the aircraft, you don't want to have to let go of your controls, and this is the problem I used to have with X-Plane 11. You take off, you'd be climbing, you'd get some ATC instruction, and you'd have to acknowledge it. Now, if you're using a yoke, it's not so bad. You can hold on to the yoke with your left hand and grab your mouse and click the option. But if you're using a stick, it's so much more difficult. So I don't understand why they didn't. It should be so obvious from MSFS that having ATC options numbered makes things so much easier. But again, maybe there's a keybind that you can do that I haven't come across yet, but I suspect you actually have to click the option, which is a shame. You know, you can learn from MSFS. It does some things really well. and I'm surprised they didn't learn from that. The presentation also I kind of have issues with, because you kind of have to mouse over the options to see them, and if you don't mouse over the options you don't see that they're there. It kind of, again, if you're using a yoke, it's not the end of the world, but if you're using a stick, that can be a problem. So you just won't see the options that are available. So yeah, to be honest, I think with their key bindings they won't deal with that, they won't fix that. It's going to be stuck that way. I think that's a real shame. I think that's maybe a legacy thing. So if I sound disappointed, it's there are some issues I can see, and I don't see them going away. Graphics is one of those things, but overall, if you like X-Plane, this is a good advance. But if you enjoy MSFS, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and as always, feel free to like, comment and subscribe.